Started right now, and I just wanted to thank all the elders and all the men willing to teach this quarter. And I think we're going to have some really good lessons from a lot of other men, and we've had some already so far. So, with that being said, my lesson this evening is going to be pertaining to friendship. So, to start out, I wanted to ask everybody, who here has friends? Raise your hand. Logan, you can put your hand down. I'm actually your friend. So I obviously say that as a joke, but because we all have friends. So life's biggest blessing God has ever given us is friends. Every man is looking for a friend, even when they visit churches. One person even said, while it still is true that people aren't looking for friendly churches, they're looking for a friend. My former preacher would always say, the Lord's church is the strangest conglomeration of people, but we have Jesus, but because of Jesus as our commonality, that we have fellowship, and by that we also share other commonalities. As I've been here, as I've been here, as has been the case here, and as my previous congregations, some here in this very room are exceedingly great at welcoming people, even like heat-seeking missiles, I'd say, when it comes to meeting new faces, and that has to be applauded. The Bible has a great deal to say about friends and how to be a friend. We'll try to touch on new topics or meat, as Paul has kind of took a bite of my chunk of my ribs last week, so I reckon there'll still be some meat on the bones. So what we'll study tonight is 4 topics: the advantage of having friends, what a friend will do for you, how to get friends, and how to destroy friends. The first verse I had was Proverbs 17:17, and if someone wants to read that when they get there, that'd be great.
A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity.
Thank you. So they will love at all times. So even at a person's worst time, a friend will still love you with puberty, pimples, warts, sickness, and all. The advantage of having a friend. Sorry. All right. Proverbs 18:24. Someone wants to read that.
A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
So what does that verse mean to y'all when you read that? Well, it may be self-explanatory, but they stick closer than a brother. So many of y'all know I actually got married recently. So I actually made a group text of all my buddies, and when I did, after the wedding, like a week or so later, I sent a text message and said, "Hey, thanks for all for coming. Y'all mean a lot to me. You're actually like my brothers." And I forgot my actual brother was in there, and he's like, "Wait a minute, I am your brother." So with that being said, even living here in Dallas, anytime I mention a previous story, Kinsey never fails to tell me that I am home now. But once born in the legendary band, as Leonard Skinner would say, Sweet Home Alabama, the idea of moving here was very challenging, the thought of it. With that being said, so at first leaving my close friends back home that I worshiped with for 8 years was tough. But after her reassuring me that even if God can take care of the birds of the air, how much more can He take care of us? With that being said, I boldly can say that I've made made friends for life of God's children here, that here for over a little over a year, and I pray that those bonds will continue. So why is a friend in your thoughts sometimes closer than a brother?
I was just going to add here with, it's easy to have a lot of companions or for people to know of you, and I guess vice versa. But, when you're in need or you need help or something like that, that's maybe a big distinction between just having companions or people that, you can have up to 5,000 people on Facebook or whatever the case may be. But a friend is really going to know who you are, and a friend is going to be there in the good times and bad times.
Yeah.
That may not always be the case even with family. Hopefully it is, but that's not often the case. But I think about David and Jonathan in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Jonathan was that friend to David, in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, I think you looked at my notes. But I've always heard that sometimes life is like, if you ever played darts, you have the outer circle, and you have people you talk to. You have the inner circle, and you have your acquaintances, people that you talk to every now and then. But in the very middle, you have your closest friends, and those are the people that you will have the best relationship with. So the next slide I had here was Proverbs 27:9, if someone wants to read that.
Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel.
Yes. So what do y'all see from this verse for the advantage of having friends? JD?
According to my version, it's the sweetness of man's friend gives delight by hearty count. So, I guess, to the point of a friend knowing you perhaps better than some of your own family, can this earnest or hearty count, so it can mean like your friend can be there to pick you up from your lowest moments, be a light in the dark in some instances. Like if you're going down like a dark path, or if you find yourself in a particularly dark moment of your life, a true friend can very well be that anchor in the storm you could desperately need.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes we definitely need those anchors in our lives. So a good friend will lift your spirits in times of need. The next slide I had here was Ecclesiastes 4:9 through 12, and then Job 2:11 through 13. If two people want to read those sections, that'd be great. Starting in Ecclesiastes.
Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken.
Thank you. And Job?
Now, when Job's three friends heard of all this adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. For they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him and to comfort him. And when they raised their eyes from far and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept, and each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head towards heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was great.
Thank you for that. So we see here in these two sections, kind of get the theme that the advantage of having friends, they give you support in times of trouble. Ecclesiastes teaches us that we're stronger together than separate. If you've ever heard of the analogy, if you have one stick and you cut it in half, it'll break. But if you put multiple sticks together and you try to break it, it's much harder. That's definitely how we can be with our friends here. So my good brother and preacher would always tell us that would later call Job's friends the three stooges of the Bible. But at first, his friends teach us that Job's friends teach us that sometimes just company and encouragement is all we need at the moment. Are there any other examples that you could think of that a good friend would give you in times of trouble?
I was going to mention, going back to Proverbs 27:9, I'm reading from the CSB translation, the Christian Standard Bible. The sweetness of a friend is better than self-counsel. I thought that was interesting, how a friend will help us to see potential blind spots and help us to see things that maybe we don't want to see, or in some way that we're deceiving ourselves. So I thought that was an interesting point, that you can have someone like that who can speak freely to you, talk to you, and if we're able to receive that counsel as well, that can be a tremendous blessing.
Yeah, definitely. We should always take that with humility and definitely learn. You?
With that same verse, your friend, your acquaintances are going to say nice things. They're going to just be on the surface, like the oil and the perfume are just on the surface. But a friend is going to tell you the hard things. He's going to tell you situations that may need correcting, and it comes from the heart. It's not just a lighthearted conversational banter. It's some serious stuff.
We definitely need friends like that always. Anything else y'all have to add to that?
I think a good friend is going to help you feel reassured and encouraged. Not something that is untrue, but whereas a foe, even an acquaintance, is going to leave you questioning yourself. A good friend is definitely going to be by our side.
Yep, amen. JD?
Well, what just came to my mind is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. One could argue they were all good friends and proved that a true friend will stand by you even at great cost to themselves. Since all three of them went into that furnace, but they all stood united in their faith. They weren't backing down, especially when the others were threatened.
Yeah. They definitely give us, definitely, as my next slide here, they definitely sharpens each other for sure. So Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another." So by having, the advantage of having friends is that they sharpen our countenance. So being from sweet home Alabama, when you live there, most of the time you always hear, you can't live there without hearing, "Who you got? Auburn, Alabama." So notice I said the correct school first. Even living there, they have to ask transplants that question too. Well, because of that, the Iron Bowl is something that we mark on our calendars every year. It's the state's bowl game. Auburn and Alabama played their first game in Birmingham in 1893. Auburn won, just in case anyone was asking. And I know y'all were dying to know. The reason it's called the Iron Bowl is because Birmingham, Alabama began in 1871, and its main purpose was to make iron and help fuel the Industrial Revolution, because Birmingham was one of the few places in the world where iron ore and coal were found within 15 to 30 miles of the city. So for over a century, Birmingham was the largest population of iron and steel in the southeastern part of the United States. This passage is known as iron sharpens iron because iron is a rare form that can be dull and ineffective. However, when two pieces of iron rub against each other, they can remove imperfections and create a sharper image. There's absolutely no doubt that every brother and sister in this room can sharpen each other by ways of loving constructive criticism, encouragement, and support. Anything else you had on iron sharpens iron? Yep.
We know that if you have iron and it gets wet, it turns into rust and it's useless. But if it has started to get rusty, something else of iron can bring it back to usefulness and to love.
I actually didn't know that, so that's I have to remember that. That's pretty awesome. Anything else to add? Yep.
You have to give as much as you take in the relationship. It's not one-sided. And if someone helps you out, you need to make sure that you're there for them as well.
Yep. Amen.
I think not to overlook the fact that, I mean, the book of Proverbs is just a series of very pragmatic points, and I think sometimes we have the idea that being alone, being by yourself, you know, that's, well, I don't really need anybody for this. And this speaks to the fact that companionship improves us, and you can't go along surrounded by friends without starting to mirror behaviors of those friends. And so we are always better if we are around those friends. I mean, if you try and sharpen an axe without iron, if you try and sharpen a knife without the correct equipment, it just doesn't work. So you have to have a companion there to do that. And I think that's really what it's driving home. Don't try and do this by yourself.
One more.
So I think you can apply this. This is good because it's how you pick your friends, how you pick the people you're around, how you pick your spouse. Your example with the sticks was good, but it's not always static. It's not always each stick is strong, right? Sometimes we're bouncing back and forth. We have a bad week or a bad day, and sometimes it kind of makes me think of being unequally yoked to unbelievers. You have to have somebody who's strong, because if they're not, you both go down at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Next slide I had was Proverbs 27:5-6. It says, "Better is open rebuke, hidden love. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy." So, from what a friend will do for you is they will rebuke you. So many of y'all know I am Chandler's new funkle. So I think if Braden and Allie are here, I don't think they are. Let's use Chandler as an example. So if Chandler was about to put her hand on the stove, what will we all do? We would absolutely tell her to take your hand off. That's going to hurt you. And swipe her hand away. So the same principle is when it comes to our friends. If we see that they're about to participate or willing error, we ought to correct them. 1 Corinthians 13:6. Let's read that real quick. It says, this is the passage about love, but it says, verse 6, "Does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth." This passage explicitly tells us that if we love people, then when we let them do error, then A, we don't love them, and 2, we aren't their friends if we allow it to occur. Job 6:14. If someone wants to read that. It says, "To him who is afflicted, kindness shall be shown by his friend, even though he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. What a friend will do for you shows that he will show pity to you." So the three stooges of the Bible make their reappearance. After Job survived the loss of his possessions, the death of his children, the diseases of his body, and the rash advice of his wife without sin. However, when his friends visited him and charged him that he was suffering because of his sin, we see Job sinned with his mouth. So what also do you see from this passage that could be applied for what a friend can do for you?
Well, unlike the quote-unquote three stooges, a true friend, when you're suffering, won't, at least hopefully, won't immediately jump to the worst possible conclusion and instead, like they did in the beginning, initially perhaps if needed, just shut up and sit with you while you feel whatever you need to feel, and then offer to help you put the pieces back together once you've fallen apart, and basically just get you back on your feet, show you kindness, compassion, be a shoulder you can lean on while you both work together to figure out whatever it is that you're going through. Again, anger and storm.
Yeah, absolutely. Next slide I had here. What a friend will do for you. Philippians 4:16 says, "Even in Thessalonica you sent me help for my needs once again." We see that having a true friend, they'll support you in times of adversity. A true friend will be there when you're in a rut, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and maybe even financially. In times of hardship, a true friend lives out the words to a popular country song I like. It says, "You find out who your friends are. Someone's going to drop everything, run out and crank out their car, hit the gas, get there fast, never stop to think what's in it for me or it's way too far. They just showing up with their big old heart. You find out who your friends are." Matthew 25:31 through 45. Let's turn there real quick. So this is the verse that Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, I believe, and he tells them that this is the parable that that they were thirsty. Did you give me drink? Naked, did you clothe me? Or sick in prison, did I come to you? We see that they did neither of those, that they actually denied Jesus. And in verse 45, he says, Then he will answer them, saying, Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of these, the least of these, you did not do it to me." With that being said, as Christ is a friend to us and to the Lord, we must be Christ-like and also regard others as Christ. It's not enough to say, "I'll pray for you," or "You're my prayer list." There are times that the only course of action is to pray. But Jesus is telling us if there's ever another opportunity available, we should always take it and do something for them. Instead, ask, "Is there anything I can do for you to ease your burden?" Something like that. Anybody have anything on that to add? Yep.
Yeah, 1 John chapter 3 would point out, "By this we know love, that he laid down his life for us. We ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth," which is exactly what you're talking about there in Matthew 25. It is not enough just to, I'll pray for you, or just all the well-wishing. It is a matter of action, and it is a matter of consistency.
Yep, amen. You also read my notes with the next point I'm about to do. So let's go to Luke 15:9. "And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost.'" And then Philippians 2:3-4, if someone wants to read that.
Nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others.
Thank you. We see that a friend will rejoice with you. A friend is there to share your joys with. Could you imagine for a second with the world where any accomplishment you would make, that a friend would not be there to cheer you on or celebrate with you? it would be terrible. Luke 15:6, 9, and 24 talk about friends rejoicing with others because they found a coin, a sheep, and then the man found his lost son, so he encouraged his friends to celebrate with him. A man once said, "Anyone can sympathize with a friend's sufferings, but it takes a fine-natured man to sympathize with a friend's success. Have your friend's best interests at heart. A true friend will not get jealous of their success, but rejoice." Let's move on.
I think you really see that a true friend is there for their friend and not for themselves. Whether the motive may come across as self-righteousness or some false sense of compassion, a true friend is there for their friend and not for themselves.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Engel. John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, than someone laid down his life for his friends. We see that so reading this passage, I'll tell you a story real quick. So when I was at FC, my grandpa's brother, he would always say, "Hey, if you're ever in the area, let us know and we can come by and we can take care of you." Unfortunately, he was not a Christian, but he was always willing to open his home and show hospitality, and that was very, very appreciated at the time. So fast forward, I think it was like a year or two after I had graduated, not graduated, but after FC, and unfortunately, I think him and his wife, they were walking down the road, and he was on the outside, and a car came, and it actually killed him, but it saved his wife. And so the story hits home because Jesus taught us the same principle. This story, he told us that we ought to have love for one another, and if it come May, that we should also lay down our lives for one another. Anything to add on that point, you think? Yep.
I think about sacrifice, right? That's what this is talking about here. And I've had a time where I called a friend. I was so down, I needed someone, and they said, "I will drop and come right now." And they were in the middle of whatever, but they loved me so much that they were willing to come. And that's what we need. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Willing to drop everything means a lot to us. How to gain friends. Proverbs 19:6 says, "Many seek the favor of a generous man, and everyone is a friend to a man who gives gifts." Then Proverbs 14:20 says, "The poor is disliked even by his neighbor, but the rich has many friends." We see here that generosity is a great quality in a friend, but when people try to buy friends, the friends often leave when the money, the fame, and the gifts run dry. After reading these verses, what are the wrong ways to gain friends?
Status.
Yep.
Compromise.
Yep. Compromise big.
Lies.
Just trying to puff them up or something.
Yeah, puffing them up, or maybe even yourself being someone you're really not.
Yeah.
This is a bit of an aside, but something, and I don't want to dive into a word study here, but the fact that it says the poor is disliked even by his neighbor, but the rich has many friends. The word friend there is going to be the word friend in every other spot. Read friend. But we know that friend there is not actually a friend. So I think it's important to understand the context. Anytime that you're reading a word like that, a friend here is not the kind of friend you want. It's important to know, hey, what kind of friend is it describing here? Not just somebody being nice to you. It is important to understand the context when you're looking at any word. Just as an aside.
Yep, brother.
I think based on that second verse, is why if people win the lottery, why they want to keep it a secret, because they get quote unquote friends coming after them for their money. And it's like, oh, here's a long lost relative. I had no idea who the person was.
Yeah, your sister's cousins, whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Zach.
You think about part of the son. He got his inheritance, and he went to a foreign country, and he gained a lot of friends. But what happened when he ran out of money? All those people left. He didn't have any friends anymore. Honestly, he never did to begin with, right? So it's really about the quality of people that you're seeking to be around. Are you seeking to be surrounded by superficial people who are going to be there for the good times, not the bad? Or are you seeking for quality people who are going to stand by you regardless of your situation?
Absolutely. To go to the next one, Proverbs 18:24 says, "A man who has friends must himself be friendly, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." So we kind of touched on the second part of this, but not the first part. How to gain friends? Be friendly. To have friend, we've all heard the quote, "To have a friend is to be a friend." I think this verse stems from that. To Paul's lesson last week, to be someone's friend, we must take time to be with them and to get to know them. Let's ask genuine questions, kind of not just surface level questions. I guess passing by we always say, not this strong, but how are you doing? Good, and kind of just walk on. Instead, we should not be afraid to ask, how are you doing spiritually? Questions like that. We should also serve their needs. We should serve like Martha and get to know them like Mary. In Luke 10:38 through 42. And unwilling to do this, we will be without friends. So try to be friendly.
CSB says, one with many friends may be harmed, but there's a friend who stays closer than a brother. So that's maybe something, another insight, with that as well. That idea of many companions with friends too.
How to gain friends. Proverbs 25:19 says, "Confidence is an unfaithful man in times of trouble, is like a bad tooth and a foot out of the joint." And also Proverbs 27:10. Someone wants to read that, they get there first.
Do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away.
Absolutely. Be loyal. I know that there are a lot of people here that know how to be amazing friends because there are multiple Texas team fans here. Be true to your friends. Don't be two-faced. Be like Peter with certain people. Be like Peter, and when certain people would come, he would or wouldn't eat with the Gentiles. Try not to do that. Be consistent, because if being that way can also lead to lack of reliability or trustworthiness. Be genuine. Why is loyalty so necessary in friendships?
Well, I think
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, my opinion goes back to one of the earlier verses we talked about how a friend can stick closer like a brother. In regards to that loyalty, to be a friend and have a friend is for both parties to have each other's backs no matter what life throws at them, to find a way to help each other, not just leave when things get difficult, to stand beside each other in the midst of the storm.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say what Christy said earlier. If you have people in your life that are reliable and willing to drop those things, versus the other person, you don't know are they going to show up, are they going to follow through, are they going to do what they say they're going to do. There's just too much inconsistency there. And even with King David with Jonathan, he had put his life in his hands, basically, right? So the reliability reliability part, Jesus talks about, let your yes be yes and your no be no. So I also thought about John Mark in Acts 13. You know, he agreed to go with Paul and Barnabas and then left midway, and that became a trust issue for Paul. Is he going to do it over again, right? So just knowing that he'll be there, that they'll be available, makes all the difference, because most people aren't typically that way.
Up, Stephen.
I was going to mention something that keeps coming to my mind as you're going through these is we sure don't want to forget that it's real easy to become complacent in other relationships where there should be friendship. And in our marriages, Christy should be my best friend.
Absolutely.
It's not something I just take for granted. It's something I have to put work into, and she has to put work into to make sure that we remain close friends and not just let it degrade into some kind of an obligation or, you know, it's something that's not a friendship. So I think the same thing with my grown children. They have their own households. And yes, they are my children, but they're my friends. I mean, I need to treat them like they're my friends, and they me as well. And so if we think about friendship in terms of family members and relationships, I'm not supposed to be just friends to people that I'm not related to or not married to. It's in every relationship. You can apply a lot of these principles.
Yeah, even studying this, I was thinking, man, this applies to the unity of the church, marriage, like the whole gambit of how we are to be a Christian. How to destroy friendship. Proverbs 6:1. Someone wants to read that? Get there.
My son, if you become surety for your friend, if you have shaken hands and pledged for a stranger.
And then 11:15 says, "Who is surety for a stranger will suffer, but the one who hates being surety is secure." And then 17:18 says, "A man devoid of understanding shakes hands in a pledge and becomes surety for his friend." With money, there's wisdom in understanding the dangers of co-signing for somebody. It can cause unnecessary stress. I think with that being said, I think looking at these three proverbs, it can cause unnecessary stress versus giving generously, giving what you can afford. If a friend gives you money with the expectation that you owe him back, don't allow that relationship to be destroyed over money. Pay them back accordingly. Be good stewards of what God gave us. How does money destroy a friendship?
Perhaps gaining a lot of money, sadly, too often in the real world, as well as in various stories, can lead to whoever receives that money to gaining a massive ego with it, which can absolutely destroy friendships and isolate that individual.
Absolutely.
It can erode the trust that you were just talking about in those previous verses. And then you can start looking at your friend in a negative light. If they owe you money and they're out buying things or doing certain things, you're like, wait a second, you still owe me money.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So it'll get in the way, and it will create a lot of different feelings of tension that may not always be shared. And then people become passive aggressive and splits.
As we're running low on time, some of the other ways I had to destroy a friendship would be whispering and gossiping. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats the matter separates close friends. Disloyalty. Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted his heel against me. Disloyalty can always kill friendships. You see David's friend joined forces with Absalom's, David's enemy. Next one I had was negligence. Hebrews 10:24 and 25 says, one we're all familiar with, says, "Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more to you as the day is drawing near." Stir up love and good works means coming together. Friendships don't happen overnight. Let's try to not go without talking to a good friend. Could cause friendships to get weaker. Check in with them to show how you care. David and Jonathan, two close friends. 2 Samuel 18, 1 through 3. 1 second.
First Samuel.
Yes, 1 Samuel 18, 1 through 3. Want to read that real quick?
When David had finished speaking with Saul, Jonathan was bound to David in close friendship and loved him as much as he loved himself. Saul kept David with him from that day on and did not let him return to his father's house. Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as much as himself.
So 2 Samuel 8, 2 Samuel 1, 23 through 26 is when Jonathan dies in battle, and we see that David says that his love meant a lot to him, even more love than a woman. This is a great example of friendship. Jonathan had David's best interests at heart and vice versa. David lamented Jonathan's death and spoke of all the great love he showed. And the last slide I had here was, when we die, how will we be remembered as a friend? We've all been blessed by friends, their company, their joys, their sorrows, and their encouragement through one another through Christ. So the last question I had for you is, how many friends do you think will attend your funeral? So with that being said, the last thing I'll close with is, there was a story I heard one time on the radio. It was an Asian man. He was trying to fake his own death to see how many friends would come to his funeral. So let's try to always be a good friend, so that when our time comes, that we can have a good amount of people supporting us. Thank you.
How many?